Hello again, welcome back. Today we're looking at a little bit of a review of decimals, percentages, and fractions. As always, up at the top, the YouTube channel and the email if you have a comment or a question or would like to see something expanded upon. Just a quick review, like I said, decimals. What are they? That's essentially what our number system is. It's got place values based on the powers of 10. Gone over that in a previous video. Just what kind of our default number system is, what we think about when we think about numbers. Percentages, it literally translates to out of 100. Percent is out of 100. If you look at the word, it's indicated by the percentage symbol. So it divides things into portions that show out of every 100. It's a percentage rate. Fractions just shows the parts compared to the whole. So, you know, if I have 5 boys in the class and 9 total students in the class, then 5/9 of the class are boys. All right. So just a quick little review there. Jumping right in here, we're going to start with decimals and how to change decimals into both fractions and percentages. Starting with fractions. Okay, so decimals, changing them into fractions is probably one of the tougher items of all the items we're going to look at here today. But we start by setting the value over 1, and then we're going to multiply by powers of 10, enough powers of 10 to get rid of the decimal point. Because when we deal with fractions, we don't want decimals within the fraction. We just want nice integers over integers. So what I'm saying is we got to do what we got to do to get rid of this decimal point here. All right, so we have 0.091. There's no fraction in sight right now, but if we understand anything, is that any number that is divided by 1 is itself. So by dividing by 1, I'm not changing the value of this number at all. I'm just putting it into fraction form. But we want to make sure that we don't have a decimal point left over. So what we need to do is we need to multiply this 0.091 by however many powers of 10, either, multiply by 1, multiply by 10, multiply by 100, multiply by 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, whatever it takes to get this decimal out of here. And if you know anything about multiplying by powers of 10, it's that every time you multiply or divide by a power of 10, you're essentially just moving the decimal point one space over. So for example, if I had 9.1 times 10, that's 91. Essentially moving the decimal point over one space. So I've got to move this over 1, 2, 3 spaces to get rid of that decimal. That's the same thing as multiplying by 1,000. Same number of zeros as in the power of 10. And if I multiply the numerator of a fraction by a number, I have to multiply the denominator because 1,000 over 1,000 is essentially 1. There's my giant 1 there. So again, I'm not changing the value, I'm just changing how it looks. So I've moved the decimal point over to where I have 91 in my numerator, and then 1 times 1,000 is 1,000. So this would be 91 over 1,000. If that would reduce, then you would reduce it. Unfortunately, that does not. Okay, so by following that same rule, 3.42, excuse me, changing it into a fraction. Got to multiply it once, move the decimal once, twice, really. So what I'm doing is multiplying by 100 on the top and the bottom. So I'm going to move this decimal point 2 spaces. 342 over 100. I can spare you the details. Both the numerator and the denominator will divide because they're both ending in, they're both even numbers, so I know they'll at least divide by 2. If you want to spend the time finding the greatest common factor, go ahead and do that. But I know these will both divide by 2. I can just start dividing like that. So 342 divided by 2 is 171. That's over 50. They will not reduce further. And then just one more example here, 0.6. Just got to move the decimal points one space over to get rid of the decimal points. So that's just 6. And then add a 0 here, 6 out of 10. Those will both divide by 2. 3 out of 5 is the final answer there. You always want to reduce your fractions. I'm just using some simple examples. So that's just decimals to fractions. Decimals to percentages. Again, percent means out of 100. Okay, it means out of 100. So essentially what we're doing here is just making this out of 100. We know we're going to move the decimal place twice, so we've got to do the same thing to the top. All we're doing is essentially multiplying by 100 here. So this comes out to be 46.3 over 100. If something is over 100, then that's the percentage that it is. So all you got to do is multiply a number by 100. There we go. So 0.3. Now we understand the shortcut. 0.3 times 100. Essentially moving that decimal place twice, filling in any empty spots with a 0, is 30. And that's into a percentage now. Okay, you can think of it in terms of money if you need to. Dollars are based on 100%. 100% of a dollar is a dollar. And then 2.1, same thing, we're multiplying that by 100. Moving the decimal twice. Again, I want you to understand why we're doing what we're doing. So that is 210%. But a lot of people say, well, we can only have 100%. Arguably, in some cases, yes, it's impossible to exceed 100%, but for right now, without arguing about it, understand that it is possible to have over 100%. It's just 100% is one whole. Okay? So if we more than double something, in other words, we now have over 200% of that item. So 210% is able to happen. Okay, that's how we're dealing with decimals. All right, moving on, looking at percentages now. So percentages to decimals, well, we just did the exact opposite, and we just moved decimals into percentages. So if we're going to do percentages to decimals, we're going to perform the opposite operation. We're going to divide by 100, because if something is 100% in this case, or if it's a percentage, we know it's out of 100. So all we're doing is doing 100 divided by 100. In this case, that is one whole. Okay, so that's just a quick example back into decimal form. Okay, 36.2%. Again, if it's a percentage, it's out of 100, so we can get rid of that percentage sign, just put it over 100. And if we divide by 100, that's the same thing as moving the decimal point over to the left 2 spaces. So in this case, that's 0.362. Now that is a decimal. Okay, it's less than 100. It's less than 100% is less than one whole. Okay. Another example, 4.1%, again, out of 100. Just means we're moving that decimal place over a couple of times. Bear in mind, we have that decimal point. We have a missing space here, so 041. Okay, 0.041, final answer there. Okay, one last example without the 100. We just know we're going from a percent to decimal form. We know it's left 2 spaces. A lot of zeros here. 0.007. If you want to put a 0 in front of the decimal place, that's okay too, but not necessary. Okay. Now percentages to fractions. Okay, well, we want to keep it in fraction form, not in decimal number form. We want it to have that fraction bar. So 20%. Remember, this is a percentage, so we can just make it into a fraction right away. It's over 100 already. So it's now in fraction form. All we got to do is reduce. So 20 over 100, I know 20 and 100 will both divide by 10. 20 divided by 10 is 2. 100 divided by 10 is 10. And then these will both divide by 2, simplifying to 1/5. You don't have to get the greatest common factor right away. It's easiest if you know it, but you can always just start reducing and do multiple steps if needed. So it's just a matter of reducing the fraction. So 114%, again, into a fraction. It already is a fraction if we just stick it over 100. No more decimal, or no more percentage anymore. Okay, so that's 114 over 100. I know those both divide by 2. 114 divided by 2 is 57. 100 divided by 2 is 50. And that will not reduce any further. A couple more examples here. Again, putting them over 100. Okay, so 0.9 over 100. I don't like that fraction, again, because it's got a decimal in it. So guess what? We've got to move this decimal place over 1. It's understood to be after the number if there's no decimal place showing. So this is actually 9 over 1,000. Okay, and will not reduce. So you can go either way. Just got to be careful of what we're doing. We don't want decimals in those fractions. Okay, last example, 18.6 over 100. Oops, because it's a percentage, so it's over 100. Again, we don't want that decimal in there, so we've got to multiply by powers of 10 until we get rid of it. Numerator and denominator. 186 over 1,000. Some of you are looking at that and saying, all right, that's not going to work because both the numerator and the denominator will divide by 2, and you're correct. Okay, we always got to reduce the fraction. They both divide by 2. That's as far as this one will go, 93 over 500. Okay. Last steps here, guys, going fractions to decimals, and I'm actually going to, you might have noticed, use the same fractions because essentially this is the same step. Doing some on-the-fly editing because I copied and pasted. But fractions to decimals, okay, we just did decimals to fractions a few minutes ago. Fractions to decimals are a little different. You simply have to divide just to get it in decimal form. So we're going to start with some easy ones. 1 over 2, might know that off the top of your head, 0.5. Okay, you can use a calculator if you need to, but that's how we change it back into decimal form. Just divide it out, and it is what it is. Okay, 7 divided by 4, you might think of that as, you know, hey, I've got 7 quarters. How much money do I have? 7 over 4, $1.75, 1.75. Simple as that. Fractions of decimals, just divide it. And then 8 over 9, we're going to have 0.8 repeating, or you may put that as 0.89 if you want to round it off. Okay, you could round that to any number of decimal places. Either one might work. Okay, but we're going to take these now and make them into percentages, okay, which is what we've actually already done. Okay, we've already done decimals to percentages, which is now what these are. Fractions to percentages is just fractions to decimals to percentages. So we're going to go ahead and divide it out and then multiply by 100. So if I have 0.5 multiplied by 100 to get the percentage, that's 50%. Simple one. Okay. Same thing, 7 over 4, we have that 1.75. Again, I'm just going to make it into a percentage by multiplying it by 100. 1.75 is 175%. Anything over 1 whole, this improper fraction here is over 1 whole, is going to be over 100%. Okay, so you got to have that number sense, got to understand 1 whole, 100%. Or an improper fraction would make it over 100%. And then last but not least, we're going to go ahead and call this 0.89 just to give us a nice round number instead of the 0.8 repeating. Again, multiply by 100. Okay, we get 89. It's now a percentage. Simple as that. I know I went a little quick, but it's because I'm using this 15-minute limit technology here. Again, that's why I leave my contact info up at the top. If you'd like to reach out, definitely feel free. I'm happy to send a response, or you're always welcome to comment, but hope that helps.